So, yes, welcome to this fourth day of our sharing the Dharma. Yes, and we'll be discussing the Paramita Fortitude. This is one Paramita for which I have difficulty choosing which English term to use for. Seems like if I use patience, it seems to cover part of it, but not everything. Tolerance, part of it, but not everything. Endurance, fortitude. What are other terms? They use several different terms. Because in certain usage, one fits not other. So in English, that seems to be what do you call it? Need of adjusting at different times. But then in such presentation, I can't just use all of those together. So I have to just stay with one. Continuing from where we left yesterday, dealing with the three ethical conduct. As you very well know, we only, in terms of the detailed precepts, we didn't go through the precepts, the Bodhisattva precepts, be that within the context of the ethics of restraint or that of the ethics of more particularly ethics of restraint. In the case of ethics of virtue, we kind of agree that basically the six perfections are what comes under that. But ethics of restraint, we didn't go into details of that. But what it constitutes is the root, you may call it root downfalls and secondary lapses, you may call. So what it is it's worth, once one has aspired to attain full awakening for the sake of all sentient beings, rooted in the preceding cultivations of first beginning with seeing one's own condition, then eventually expanding it out with enough support of love, compassion, gratitude, etc., and thus becoming really very wise with a long-term goal in view, then it would be worth, even at the wishing bodhicitta level, or even before that, while kind of still in the contriving stage, it would be worth looking at those precepts in detail, because those are not just black and white, but those are presented in a very flexible, understandable, and reasonable kind of a way. So it would be good to see the dynamics of them, and thus be able to kind of go about one's life in a way, succeeding and managing in turning everything around for a strength, for a force that contributes to augmenting, enhancing this project that one has at hand in pursuing the highest goal possible for the sake of all sentient beings. So that would include even situations like what you do when somebody invites you, right? What you do when you are faced with criticism. There are options there. It's not just one way out, but rather options depending not solely externally, exclusively on how it appears, how it might project and appears in the outward or outside world, but what's going within you and what kind of adjustment you make in kind of then pursuing further. So There are cases when you should respond back. There are situations when you should not, like that. And so is the case with any happening. Yesterday we talked about, and then yes, so those are covered there, and from that one could get some sense of what the implied instructions might be, also in different situations that may not be explicitly conveyed there. So, in a way, just to give you an idea, it's good to know that even if it's just one precept, in terms of how you relate to that, will relate to that, how you relate to that, how you relate to that, how you respond to that, either with an explicit action or non-action, or in between. One sees how one way of relating to that situation would amount to a bridge with an affliction, one a bridge not with an affliction, one not even a bridge in how you respond to that. So, and those are not just kind of a, what do you call, not just kind of a top-down kind of established rules, but rather has to be adjusted in accordance with one's own situation, one's own strength of Dharma practice. Even in the case of the virtue of altruism, we saw how, despite that aspiration that one may have to serve others in whatever forms, including up to working to full awakening, but in terms of what you actually do or not do, should be adjusted to, should be in sync with the situation, and more particularly with where you are in terms of how much you could sustain, how much you could endure, what is the weakness, where is the risk for you to kind of fall into the traps once again of the afflictions that may be just trying to kind of loop an opportunity. So all those have to be looked into, because and that's very important. As much as we may feel like, yes, something should be done, etc., at a large scale, etc., etc., but in terms of how it would ultimately turn out to be, will very much depend on, of course, with the motivation to start with, but more importantly, or as I say, or as I may say, as important is how you sustain through that. How you sustain through that with the integrity, be that on your part, on those who are kind of facilitating it, etc. And that's very important. Suppose you start out a social project, whatnot, but then in the meantime you succumb to the lures of attention, lures of accolades, lures of respect, and etc. Then you kind of your own afflictions, which were not that very well tamed, to get the upper hand and then ruins it. Then that not just only ruin the project, it really goes farther than that in really kind of losing faith in the practitioners, losing faith in the Dharma. And what worse can there be than that? As I was saying, if that's the only thing that people should be able to turn to and learn and kind of really be able to kind of keep themselves upright in the face of sufferings. If that's something that they have been completely talked out of, even before testing, even before trying, from what they have experienced on their own in terms of what things look like, then that would be too terrible. Likewise, on the other hand, also, if something is something non-dharma, something very damaging and very harmful is happening. If one has the strength, if one has the what you call the endurance, the confidence of sustaining through whatever it may take, then the scripture even says, in such case, just take head on, fight head on. And the example it gives is like two yaks. Have you seen those? It could be bulls, bisons, but yaks, they are spectacular. Oh, when they take on each other, it's like, come on, until death. Something like that. But in the course of doing so, not lose out on your side of how to proceed, your own calmness, your own sense of purpose. So those should not be compromised, nor should your claim of practicing Dharma should compromise on standing up for where it needs to be. So I was, notice is written here on the top of it, so I missed it. So I said, oh, I must get this. Because just mentioning that, it kind of makes the point clear, right? It makes the point clear. And if, in such cases, if we could really, endure through the process, yet at the same time be able to really stand for our right or the right thing to do for the purpose, for the benefit of others, yet at the same time, more importantly, what would go a long way in really serving humanity would be not just getting something done or something, keeping something from happening, but the way you do it could go straight into the hearts of people. That's where actually all of the spiritual structures should be building. We should all focusing on that and kind of build skyscrapers in there of love, compassion, all founded on a very good grounding of common humanity, gratitude, dependence, all of that. And then when we have that, then problems like we face, some just, explicitly nonsense, explicitly totally illogical, irrational, might have difficulty coming forward in the first place, because those projects, those propositions come from people. And within each individual people, they come from their hearts. If the hearts are changed, I may sound very idealistic, but that's really how I believe. Because when I look into myself, everything that comes, it comes from my either intentional, conscious intention, or some dispositions within me that I can see, some signs within me that's kind of, that's kind of dictating that. So that's where we should reach, and that's what His Holiness's concept of secular ethics is about. By the way, everyone, this project, though it has its center in Emory, should not be left to Emory. It's Emory, just Emory, or to just do the center. It's something that's being should be looked at like someone is coming up with a sample of what could be done, how it could be done, why it is needed to be done, and that should be then that should percolate to all corners of the society, and everyone should be as enthusiastic and as encouraged and inspired to do their part of what it would look like in their respective situation. That's how collectively we could make a change. So in that respect, let me do some advertisement here. I see this more than a Dharma work. Dharma, if you look at Dharma as Buddhist Dharma, although it is not, if you look at Dharma as Buddhist Dharma, then I see this work as whole world Dharma. And so I brought just few copies of them, so there will be copies made for anyone interested in having, so that they should know something is happening, rejoice in that, and also know where to look up for more information, who to contact. And particularly if you have, right now the focus is on working in the schools, but that should not be the only area that we work. And the idea to work in the schools settings is over a period of 50, 100 years. All of those children in the schools would come into the society, would be in the leading situation, leading position, and thus there will be a big change there. So we are thinking, not we, I mean His Holiness's vision is long range, long term. But then, so for now it is kind of geared towards the school settings, and that's why we are talking in terms of curriculum, whatnot. But it doesn't. It should not be merely limited to curriculum. It should be any. It could take any form of kind of learning the skills, be that emotional intelligence, and then learning the social intelligence of interaction, and then the systems intelligence of how, on a larger scale, systems happen, so that when we raise up our voice, we would have an informed understanding of how to proceed, where to point it, what to propose in terms of, rather than just merely raising our voice. So for now, the focus is on education. So that's why we are working on curriculum. So among you who have teachers, educators, school supervisors, it would be very good to at least let them know that such thing is in progress, and maybe very soon, not just very soon. The date is fixed. April 4 to 6, 2019 is when the program will be launched internationally, and so it would be good to kind of let them know that's happening and where to look for in terms of information and in terms of their involvement. It could be in so many different forms: formal, informal, at their own discretion of learning, knowing where to look for, to then improvise on that in how to convey that, how to integrate that in whatever they may be doing, and eventually it should percolate to the entirety of the world. Idealistically thinking, then we can hope for the whole world changed, transformed. Maybe we'll begin to test nirvana on earth, or heaven on earth. I mean, in the scriptures we do speak of visualizing oneself into deity, but not just oneself, all the rest along with that as deities. Now the area is changed, the realm is changed, everyone is now Buddha. Buddhas would have no problem at all. Right? They would be just, no matter how many of them they may be, they would be just so flexible, so harmonious. But we're not necessarily far off from that, because we all have the seed for that. So that's what I wanted to share before I forget, from where we were last time. Okay, then we'll go to fortitude. That's cultivating fortitude towards harms in general, and in the context of bodhisattva. So when we are talking about the paramitas, we cannot just say, oh, I have yet to aspire for enlightenment, have not yet taken bodhisattva, these do not have anything to do with me. These could be done at all the levels, And since we are doing this in the context of bodhisattva, of course, the fortitude, as with all other perfections, is more geared towards serving sentient beings, and more geared towards the form of fortitudes in the context of serving sentient beings. So in particular, it would be training in fortitude in accomplishing the welfare of others. So in that context, we usually speak of three forms of fortitude. Yeah, this one coming first is not a coincidence. I think this really gives us a message. Yes, first establish the Dharma within you. This is so important. We should not lose sight of that at all. And in a way, even not so obviously, that cultivation, that development within us can really go even far further than any other physical, material projects can go. Even if so, and that establishment within oneself can really change oneself, and people one comes in contact with, even the environment, even how you treat, where you go, how you treat the environment, would be, in an unobvious way, really affect the inhabitants there, the people around there, the discussion around there. So those unobvious yet subtle revolution, if you will, subtle transformations should not be lost sight of. Should not be lost sight of. More particularly, I mean, since what you aspire to do in terms of helping others should stem from your motivation. Motivation usually is a one-off thing, or as we usually think of this, that the mindset at the beginning of a project. But more important than that is what sustains it. So it should be kind of supported by the corollary associated mental strengths. So one should definitely take time in developing that. That's the reason why I think among the Fortitude, like with any other perfections, also if we look clearly, this one comes first. So here, the first example is like that of the earth, right? Like that of earth. Earth, maybe if we really push too hard, the earth may complain, or the environment complain. But usually it kind of endures, right? It endures. And it serves as the basis, support for just about everything that's placed on it. It doesn't complain like that. Oh, that is too much. It doesn't. It does takes everything in stride and goes with it without complaint. Likewise, any practitioner, anyone who is working to improve their mind, it is not easy the deal. Mind is so delicate, fickle, and on top of that, we have already abused it. Its fickleness, its delicateness to the wrong direction. So it's like now saying, now come back. So, how come? You have always told me to go there. You have always pulled me there. Now you're saying come back. See, I've gone so far. That's how the mind complains. So that's why if you insist on calling it back, you have to be as persistent, as focused, kind of really pulling back again, say, day after day, and then eventually say, okay, it seems like that's what you really like me to do, despite all these directions in the wrong. Then it may begin to relent and say, okay, now I'll... Yeah? So that's how there's this need of being very realistic in what we are working on, mind. Right? And it is... but at the same time, it is not different from any other compounded phenomena, any other conditioned phenomena. It is subject to conditioning. And how effective it would be would depend on what level of conditioning how persistent we remain in that conditioning, how persistent and consistent we remain in that positive conditioning. And particularly in the context of Bodhisattva, it's not just improvement for one's own sake, but for the sake of all sentient beings. And thus one should be as much encouraged and inspired to expect difficulties and to be able to face with them. One thing we should know is that difficulties are almost like milestones, right? And if we could deal with them and overcome them, that's what difficulties seem to be for. Not to kind of back up, but rather to face. And in anything we do, it's not the doing, but how we do. Right? That's so important. That we may end up dealing with it, kind of tackling with it, but in terms of how we endure through that process of tackling, we will decide what would be the next. And so those perspectives should be very, very clear. And then the next metaphor is the smith's anvil. Smith's anvil. All it gets is beating on it. Nothing but beating. Day by day, day by day. Even after it has become totally red and whatnot, even the beating doesn't stop. So likewise, any hardship that befalls one's body and mind. Sometimes people have this intention. I've met people who said, I'm a Buddhist. I should subject myself to suffering. When I'm presented with food, even with permission, whatnot, that I can have it, I should avoid that and I should eat the worst ones. So that's very strange. I don't know where do they get this idea. So what it is saying is that not necessarily, unless as we talked about propitiating or appeasing the harmful veteran harmers, right? Unless we are very confident in saying that come what harm, that's only going to, catalyze, serve as a catalyst to me in kind of making a big leap forward and being of service of others in a much shorter period and whatnot. Unless one has such confidence, the idea here is not to necessarily not to necessarily ask for problem, but when problem is present, be able to be present there, judiciously, consciously, smartly, wisely, so that one could deal with that. And in the course of doing so, that may entail enduring unease, tension, whatnot. But then put up with them with fortitude. In a way, what we call physical pains, hardships can be understood. But in terms of actual pain that the physical pain begins to feel is when we give in to our own afflictions, on our own weaknesses. Then we begin to feel the actual pain. The pain kind of, until then the pain kind of stays here. We invite them in here when we succumb to our weaknesses. And then when we are very careful, skillful in really turning our mind to something else, whatnot, even the pain on the body will not be felt. And that's factual thing, that's actual thing. That's something we need to tap on. But still, if given one's level of training, strength, if one still nonetheless feel those pain and kind of difficulty in really pulling up the right perspectives, whatnot. Just look at one's mind, and then get to know what it is up to, what it is going through, and thus be able to then pull up whatever means, even after it has already happened, keeping it from aggravating, getting worse. Now, with the tool of awareness, with the tool of mindfulness in the present moment. We usually speak of mindfulness in the present moment a lot, but usually it is kind of confined only to what is happening, like what you're doing, what you're seeing. Of course, those definitely do come within that purview, but more so present in the sense of present state of mind. So if we could pull that up and be able to look at our mind clearly and see clearly for what it is, without any pretension or without any confusion or whatnot, then we would have we stand a much better chance of really making a change, making a difference there, bringing a difference. See, this fortitude, called the fortitude of practicing Dharma, the Tibetan term is Chöla Ngesem. In other contexts, it is also interpreted as fortitude in pursuing an understanding of emptiness, and in integrating it into one's practice, in integrating it into anything that you do. That makes perfect sense also, in that it is very often, no, should I say, always, at the samsara level, when our self-grasping attitude gets a free hand, complete free hand, multi-country visa, or should we say every country visa? And it kind of percolates and permeates just about any of our actions and attitudes and whatnot. That's when it would have already fed some sense of clinging, holding on to. And when we fall for that clinging and holding, then basically the tension is bound to happen. It will be pulling this way, some things will be pulling that way, in the sense that things keep on changing. And who knows, changing for what you don't want, etc., etc. But you have this clinging, right? May that be clinging on the basis of self-grasping, clinging in the sense of wanting, or in the sense of repelling, or as I say, in the scriptures say, both in the form of wanting, but wanting to go away, the other wanting to come to me, both in the sense of wanting. And thus there is this tension there. So, what is the expression? What is the expression? Tough when the going gets tough. Yes. When the going gets tough, then the tough gets going. Yes. To even tough up against tough, and out tough it. Right? Tough it up and out tough it.
Cowboy up.
Yes, cowboy up. Yes, I like that. Okay, yes. And in that respect, can you see what I'm typing? Cowboy up. So, in that respect, this understanding to whatever level, of course, with all precaution, not to fall into the extremes. The worst extreme that one could fall, that one could tend to, in pursuing understanding of emptiness would be into nihilism, right? Into nihilism. So in that respect, it would be always good to remember that the correct understanding of emptiness should point to affirming dependency. Makes you feel like all that is left is dependency. All that is left is dependent origination. Just because things are empty of inherent existence, all there is everything is existing only dependently. So it should kind of come around to reaffirm and strongly reaffirm dependency, so that one begins to take responsibility in how one does. And if one could pursue the understanding in this on the track, then however level of understanding one builds of emptiness would come handy in cowboying up against toughness. Did I use it right? Yeah. Yes, okay, so in cowboying up against the tough. Yes. Okay. Yeah, in this regard, since this time we will not be able to get to the perfection of wisdom, I wanted to bring one element for you to consider. Usually when we speak of emptiness, we say, where's the cup? Just take the parts apart. If you don't find it, that's emptiness. That is one way of emptiness. But it's just natural for the way cup is, for it to be not found in that way. But not finding that way is not a big deal. It is coming close enough, but it is not it. At least that's how I understood. How that's the next step to kind of push to. And you may say, oh, how? Wait a minute, the scriptures also describe like that. Oh, the person is not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. Almost like saying, oh, just finding that it is not this after all, not all of this is the it. There's a way of pursuing it. Of course, yes, the way to it is perfectly okay to present it by kind of taking the parts away, but in a way to do so that the parts are not the cup, and the collection is not the cup. But not just the part is not the cup, but the part is not inherently the cup or the part. So attach the inherent nature to every part of it. Then if you don't find it, then that's a big deal. Because if things were to be inherently existent, right? If things were to be inherently existent, then it should be findable. It should be findable through such search, and not finding that would have negated it. Not by way of looking through the parts and not finding it, it would be a way of not finding it by processing that way, but that not finding doesn't necessarily have negated it, because that way of finding doesn't need to, doesn't presuppose or doesn't necessarily entail, doesn't necessarily require for the inherent existence to surface up if it were to be there. Basically what I'm saying is, yes, breaking it into parts and not finding it is not it. Rather, one has to find them in such a way that one becomes very clear that things are neither inherently one with the cup, or they are inherently separate from the cup. If they are neither inherently one or inherently separate, there is no other way for things to be inherently existent. The only option is for them to be inherently one or inherently two, inherently other. And for us to come to that kind of understanding, the search should also involve looking for inherent cupness, either in the parts or in the collection or outside of that. And in the wake of that, when one becomes certain that it is neither inherently one nor inherently other, then that would have negated inherent existence. Because if inherent existence were to exist, it would have to show up in the wake of such and such. But at the same time, it's kind of breaking it down and then looking for it and not finding it. It's an indication. It says something. It says something. Particularly in the writing of Ketubje, he makes this point very clearly, and takes this very seriously. And then if we look into look into Shantideva's text and whatnot, there, in the course of searching for things, for the body, for the self, in the way it does, by kind of teasing out all the different parts and saying where it is, the implied, although either you may find it at the very beginning, at one point, searching for inherent parts and whatnot, and then that has to be then borrowed into the following ways of searching. So it has to be seen in connection, in the context, like in Har Sutra. It begins with no eyes, no nose. Has to be then tied up to where we began with, saying nothing inherently exists, not as an inherent eye, not an inherent nose, etc. So it just occurred to me to throw this. You may already be considering it, you may already have done it, but from how I presented it in the previous years, I stopped short of that, and that now I need to follow it up. Okay, now let's move on. The next one, yes, putting a load on dogs. Say you are going on a trip, on a mountain trek. You are taking your dog. Let the dog carry some of the supplies. Unless you really force on the dog by putting something that it cannot get off, then it will have no choice but to. But usually anything you put, the dog will feel like it's so uneasy, let me shake it off. Right? It will do any small thing, it will not take. So at least in India, dogs do not carry anything. But here I think you can come up with a way by which you could make it carry. Like you can make it wear things. Wow, I have seen dog shows. By the way, it is so interesting. Animals, speaking of their potential, and the possibility of continuing from someone very smart as a human being, now with some slight bad luck, got trapped into this human body, but dog body, but still carrying the continuum of that. Some can outsmart us. Some can even speak, right? So this is the good thing about the social media that I sometimes miss after having deactivated my Facebook. So I'm considering going back, but with the difference, if I may succeed, if I build up the courage. Otherwise, I've stood my ground in kind of keeping away from it for maybe 2 years, 3 years now, without announcing. And it's not a big deal, right? Did you feel the tremor? I just exited. Be on your own. Just joking. I'm so far away from there. But yes, I saw America Got Talent. Actually, somebody even introduced Tibetans Got Talent. Yeah, and it was going from one settlement to another. Yeah, but it was very successful in really giving the talents a chance for them to kind of try out, for them to be recognized, and who knows, right? Those could be just tools, and they can then use it if they are smart enough, if they come to the awareness, to utilize for very, very good things, right? So fame, name, wealth, position, they are not bad things. If one could utilize them, they can come so handy. That's something that one, if one has the confidence that yes, one could keep them under control, and not take over, then those could come of so much value. So yes, in one of the American Got Talent, there's a dog, someone brought a dog, and he gets that dog to speak so clearly in English, and also in some pieces of French. Yeah, I saw that, so I cannot deny it. Wow, it's so interesting. Yeah, I cannot explain fully. This is almost like an experience of emptiness. You have to experience it. Okay. Yeah, they make the small dog really talk, and they would converse, and then the response coming from that is so hilarious. Irrespective of, understandably, what you call choreographed, right? But nonetheless, the response coming from the dog is, all the judges kind of went, the person who brought the dog must have meant it deliberately. He kind of got into conversation with the dog not responding at all. Everybody but thought, this is a complete failure. The person on the platform, on the stage, is a complete jerk. But then he got it into it. Oh, everyone went from into. Eventually, they all gave a standing ovation.
The sticks into elephants.
Pardon?
And then they changed the sticks and pebbles into elephants and horses.
Oh. And they what? Please.
You know the Satrajika analogy of the magician who changes sticks and pebbles into horses and and elephants. So after the dog spoke, then they did that too.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. And before they did that, they passed around the drug that you take that makes you see things like that.
Oh.
I'm joking, Tickers.
I see. Okay. Yeah. But have you also seen that people that post on Facebook where they show you lion taking care of fawn, right? I wonder if that's fake or Photoshop or not. That's amazing. And another lion is charging, but that lion is treating that as its own cub, its own baby. Oh, that thinks like, maybe bodhisattvas could come in animal form. Yeah, lion forms, any other forms. Either with a deliberate agenda, or but by slight bad luck in between, and past karma, past negative karma kind of seeping through. Okay, yes. So the idea here is, now that we are into the square area, it shows what are the how do we mess up in this practice? How should we be careful in not falling into those? Where the example here is a dog, which is not a customary beast of burden, is not used to taking anything on its back. It's used to just going free, with nothing on its back. If anything in its mouth, maybe a bone, whatever, not sure how big it may be, but not a slight small thing on the back. So, likewise, we may have taken this vow, we may have generated aspiration or whatnot, but then we have to kind of persistently remind ourselves of the inevitability of challenges before us in so many different ways, and thus be able to kind of stand up to it, have the presence of mind in really maintaining one's composure in the face of that, if possible, even turning it around for better. Otherwise, unless we kind of ready ourselves up, unless we cowboy ourselves up, it's very easy for us to fall prey to the circumstances. Even slight, what do you call? Slight triggers. Pardon? Slight. Inconvenience. Yeah, even a slight inconvenience could completely turn us off. Yes, turn us off. And if that remains our own, and if that consistently remains our reaction, then it will only remain as aspiration. We will not be making any stride towards gathering our strength. Then it would only remain. Then it would only become like having looked for seed, now got it, and then left it on the table and really completely forgot about it. And the seed will just remain seed there. No germination, no activity will happen. Oh, and then the next one is, I don't know what you call this thing, sensitive scar when the wound is just healing. But we can all relate it. What button? A scab. How do you spell it? S-C-A-B. Oh, S-C-A-B? Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, in Tibetan also the term used is not that commonly used. It's called xiao. It's so strange. Yeah. But now I can make sense. Because xiao, when we use the term wu, 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 chi wu, qi wu, ta wu, then it means offspring. So it's like not complete flesh, but in the process of becoming it, in the process of returning to becoming a normal flesh after the wound is gone. So scab, yeah, offspring or a baby in the process of becoming the adult. Yes, now it makes sense. So particularly these scars are known to be very sensitive, right? Even a slight touch can really tickle or really hurt. So likewise, it says that in the face of any in the face of any hardship, any challenge, if we kind of without our awareness and presence of mind succumb to them very easily, then one has to be wary. One has to be wary about that, be aware of that, and try to kind of make up for that by reminding oneself of how the problem that one has just kowtowed to is not that is not that demanding, or is not that, it doesn't warrant that kind of a reaction. And then kind of in the meantime build one's strength to kind of then the next time when we face a similar situation, we just not reactively kowtow to it, but rather kind of respond to it in a wise way. So in this regard, training to really become aware here and now, once in a while, calling the mind back, right, is very, very, helpful and essential, I think. Otherwise, if say in the process of focusing on something, if somebody calls, right away we kind of lift that mindfulness and then kind of turn our mind wholly into something. We were already left all of those, and then in the meantime there is this possibility of missing out on things or undoing things, like the metaphor we use of the monkey, right? Thinking like this is the cutest thing, this is the nearest to my heart, I must protect it. But when suddenly something happens, that's the first thing that you lose. Like that. And you just end up carrying the same self-grasping attitude with you. Like, what? You weren't gone? Fortitude of not retaliating. Yeah. So here, the sage, power of fortitude. Yeah, this, after I heard from some of you, it seemed like, I first thought that in the presentation I wouldn't go much into telling the, stories, but Buddha's birth stories and others, and kind of just refer to them and then go into the detail. But speaking to some of you, it seemed like you liked that. So let me go into the mode of storytelling. This comes from Buddha's previous life, from the Buddha's birth stories. Get up. I think this 39 something. Buddha's 29 something, some in the 30. So in Buddha's get up, Buddha's birth stories before becoming Buddha. So Bodhisattva. There was a sage by the name of Sebetop or Chambetop, compassionate and more particularly training in fortitude. He happened to be in the deep forest meditating with many of his followers, admirers as well, kind of meditating in the forest. One day, the king with his ministers, 4 of them, the king with queens and others, happened to kind of take time out in the forest, maybe ready to even hunt animals or whatnot. But somehow, in the course of that traveling, they got tired. The king particularly needed rest. So he rested and eventually he went into sleep. All the others kind of ventured out, slowly looking into the flora, foliages, beautiful wild flowers, whatnot. And then in the course of that movement, they come across this sage in meditation, deep in meditation from far. So he was very steeped in it, so firm and steeped in it, deeply steeped in it. And eventually they got his attention by showering flowers on him, and that kind of woke him up and looked around. And they asked, it was apparent from his deep meditative state for those many years that he was carrying very stable, peaceful, undisturbed mind within him. It's amazing, right? What we have within, unless we make real effort in kind of stopping it coming out, it just comes out. And it can be felt around also. So they were appreciating him, were kind of witness to his real, his deep meditative seriousness, and also from the glow, from the appearance. They were all appreciative, and they kind of sat down and were in a very respectful manner, kind of almost beginning to seek some teachings or have some conversation, or maybe already have had, not that the story brings it up. And then the king wakes up. He said, how come nobody's around? And he suddenly wakes up and goes, and then he finds them surrounding the sage. He got very angry. Particularly, he was very jealous that the queens were kind of really respecting that person, kind of into that. He was very angry. He said, what are you doing? I'm meditating. On what? Fortitude. Is that right? Okay, let me see. He cuts off limbs, one again, the other. Then he asks first the hands off. He says, what are you doing? Practicing on fortitude. Is that right? Okay, let me. Then he cuts. So it's all blood, but still he stays put there. And eventually his followers, others comes, how come you can endure this? Can't you just say, stop it, or whatever? No. And then the king around that time got disturbed. And then, as a sign of the fortitude, the earth began to shake. Then the king could not, could not miss that, could not miss out on that. So he wondered whether he has just committed a very grave crime, or a very grave crime or not. And he said that now I begin to see what you really mean. You really seem to be that, and thus he says, if that's what you really do, let me call on the power of truth and say that I regret this, and if what you say is true, let me call on the power of truth, that let your limbs get restored. And it got restored. That's the story part. So then everyone was taken in, and then the king invites him, even occasionally, to the palace for meals, and then he would go back. But then some other religious practitioners of different faction got jealous. Oh, his name will go out wide far. The king has also begun to pay attention to him, and through that the whole empire will begin to honor him, and along with that his group, his community, and we will be left out. So they were doing their best in kind of giving vent to their jealousy, to their anger, to their jealousy more particularly, by smearing his body with ashes, throwing dirt over him, whatnot. So in the meantime, when the king had cut his limbs, whatnot, and he still, the king at the very initial asked if he had immeasurable love, compassion, etc., or if he had high level absorption, etc. He would say no, none of that. Then what are you doing? Spending time in the wilderness, practicing fortitude. Okay, then let me try fortitude, because since you don't have this, how come you can even dare to put up this show and waste their time? And thus at the end, after the king had regretted, he would make a prayer that when I become enlightened, may I be able to cut through your ignorance with the sword of wisdom. And then later on, when people from the other block, other group, other faction, were doing that. Again, he's put up with his fortitude and wished that he would be able to wash their mental dirts with the water, with the nectar of wisdom when he becomes enlightened. That's how he prayed. So that's as far as fortitude can go. Not that you have to necessarily suffer. If that's what you suffer, it's surely better off not to bring up even more suffering, right? It is not saying, oh, can someone cut my limbs? I will show you how. That's not saying that. That was the situation he was in. The king was just bent on going to it. And then his fortitude really came handy in not bringing more suffering, if at all, more good from that. In really pointing to the strength of mind that can be trained, in really showing a way how as serious a situation could be endured, etc., etc. So it goes far. So then, that's where the story stops, and looking back, Buddha shares this story, and he says that sage, I was the sage, the four ministers were the four ministers and the queen, or the four ministers and the king were his first disciples. So one thing that we can look here is things could be as serious like that, but there we still have choice. Of course, not that easy coming, but provided we stay put in our clarity, integrity, whatnot, there's still possibility of not necessarily showing off people how you can stand, but you yourself not ending up bringing more suffering than you're already suffering. And that's true for all situations. Somebody makes a big deal about death, right? What if I may die? Right? That's the surest thing. That's the one only surest, certain, guaranteed thing from our day one. All the others are up in the air. All the others are still up in the air. Pardon? Up for grabs. Yes, up for grabs. No surety what will happen. That thing is the only one single surest thing. Why not be able to accept it and kind of integrate it with our life? Because it is clinging to life to a great extent that makes the moving difficult, that we are stuck. We can only go far enough and then not anymore, because that's where we are tied, not off the hook. And even when that comes, kind of saying, if we train in coming back to our mind, my mind on my mind, then definitely even such a situation could be endured through in a joyful, meaningful, wise way. And particularly when we speak of rebirth following that, of course, that very crucial transition period, the attitude that you have at that time would have a big say in what, from the wealth of karmas, good and bad, could be activated, selected, because of the mentality at that point. Because the attitude at that point is even slightly going backward, going before that, but particularly at that point, would be very crucial in kind of latching onto a concordant, in kind of latching onto, or in kind of choosing, fermenting, germinating that karma that can have that. That karma that can connect with it. Okay. So then the next one is like trees. It is almost like the same as the earth example that we used early on. Yeah, in this regard, I have been exchanging email with Tanya a lot. Every time I see her email, I cannot avoid seeing, what do you call that? At the end of the email, what do you have? Master Dogen. But what do you call that? Signature line. Okay, thank you. Signature line. Yes. In the signature line, it reads, "The practice of benefiting others is the total truth. Thus it liberates self and others, far and wide. To realize this is to serve friend and enemy equally, and to see that even grasses, trees, wind, and water naturally reflect this sacred activity." Zen Master Dogen. Every time I see that, I particularly look at that and I say, yes, that's very true. We may say, oh, that's very different, trees don't have mind, whatever. But but what I'm saying here is, even with our mind, we should be even prepared for that and doing even better job, knowingly, consciously, because we have the mind. How could we say, oh, we have all right to behave worse because we have mind? That's not a smart logic. I also have some friends who look up to trees, and after some introduction to Buddhism and whatnot, they begin to wonder if the trees might actually be Buddhas. Because the way they kind of calmly stand there, let you do whatever it does, and then it gives you shade, it kind of makes the soil better, kind of have a good effect on the environment. It's like providing, almost taking nothing. They sometimes wonder and say, this is a good reminder, and makes us wonder if those might be. I mean, for some that works. But so I see. So you see what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, the trees could be treated, it could be cut, hit, or dug out, whatever, but they just... And that's just the way of calling it. It's just the same with anything. Anything inanimate, even this cup. See, we may or may not be wanting it, but I lifted the lid. But then in the images of trees and others, it is very apparent how much they contribute, how much they provide. And then, yes, the next one is a mouthful of food. So this is showing us that in cases, unless we stand guard on our reactivity, despite having the aspiration as big as bodhicitta, we could very easily fall for very trivial things, even if that be choosing the bigger half or getting either the bigger or the smaller half of the apple. It could really disturb one. So it's saying, be very clear how in many cases it would be just a matter of a mouthful of food that's at stake, but we tend to make it so big and really kind of disturb ourselves. So there's this need, there's this pointing out the fact that yes, giving in, losing out on some accounts is not necessarily always bad. What would have happened if you had struggled on that? It would have snowballed into much bigger, worse situation that may just keep on lingering, staying all through, and messing out with so many of our works. While at the same time, if one has just given in, sometimes that could have not only settled the situation from growing worse, but even serve as a seed for something very significantly positive growing within oneself and within the others, and kind of really making a change in the environment that can then kind of grow further and further. So sometimes it's just a matter of one word that you utter or not utter that can make a difference. So have the presence of mind that everything that comes in your mind, just don't spew out, but kind of have a control of what to let out and what to let not. Once it's let out, it's everybody's. When it's kept in, it's your own. I think you can use it in the right time, right opportunity, but not just squander it out to only bring more problems. And such action, however trivial it may look, if we add up on them, then they can become bigger and bigger and bigger into something very significant. Yeah, then the next one. The fortitude, the basis of fortitude. Again, this is referring to the Indian master Atisha. When he came to Tibet and spent many years and even passed away there, he had an Indian Achara, they say call it Achara, Indian companion, very unruly person, just easily angered. It's just they just don't go, they just don't match. But Atisha cherishes him. This is my precious teacher of patience that I happen to have with me. Because others who got close to Atisha really liked him and kind of honored him, said, "What? Why in the world you bother to have him with you? Just part with him. It'd be far better off. All it brings is problems, creates problems, not just for you occasionally maybe, but for everyone around. So that's what he's up to." Then they would approach Atisha and say, "Get rid of it. I have a good advice for you, Atisha, with all respect, get rid of it." I said, "No! What? You got to be kidding. You're saying get rid of my precious jewel?" Yeah, that's my precious teacher, he says, precious teacher of tolerance. Yeah. And then, next one. Oh, sounding alert. Here I have it in round, here you have it in square. I changed it just this morning. Suppose you are in a very disturbed place, right? And there's possibility that anyone from anywhere could be throwing something against you, a rock or even an arrow or whatnot. Would you appreciate someone that really kind of what would you call, stops them behind you? You would, right? It's like, oh, would you appreciate someone saying, look, there's something behind you, and you succeed in kind of dodging it. You appreciate it, right? Same attitude we could adopt to someone who is pointing to your weaknesses, pointing to you, saying, you do this, you get so easily angry, you are the one. It's like, watch out, that's a stone coming there, dodge. It's like sounding alert. What is the expression you say? I have your back, right? Yes, it's like somebody who is having your back, and you don't recognize it, and you make what do you call? You make a big fuss about that. Actually, it makes it even sharper. It says, if someone going along with you senses that there was an arrow coming in your way, right? There was an arrow coming in your way, and then makes you recognize it, makes you aware of it, then wouldn't you appreciate such an alert call? Because that would save you from problems. Likewise, when somebody senses problems, somebody senses weaknesses in you, and then call out on that, then it's like a very welcome, alert, alarm sound that one should look up. And that, yes, this has been sensed by somebody. And that it should be there within me or look into you. Usually, as I say, those and such person should not have to be something really meaning to do good. Actually, this person, if they do a good job, they should be meaning to be bad. They should be really harmful intentionally. Then they hardly miss. Yeah, then they really hardly miss. It's like they get it. Oh, sometimes very subtle things that we may not meet, that we may not really sense, they get it. It may be so subtle that we do not see it, clearly, but somehow there's it kind of gets reflected in our very subtle attitude, very subtle eye movement or whatever. They get it. And then when they point it out, it's like saying, it's like really pointing the finger at the very subtle dirt that you have within you, that to watch out. I have experiences of that. To this point, I relish, and I kind of include that person among my teachers, saying, that's so good, so good. And he got it. Otherwise, I would have just overlooked it. And have to still watch out for that weakness and acknowledge it, and then watch out for it. Kind of be aware that otherwise you would let it spoil. Okay. Now. But yes, please.
Does that contrast with some, even in, I don't know if it's the blue book or the red book, and when we're chanting, the recommendation is to avoid, those individuals, find people that, have more of the kinder attitude. Is it just a matter of the skill level, recognizing where you're at, that you have those people around you?
Yes. Avoid when you feel that you will be affected worstly, and then embrace them when you think that you can handle it, that you can. So those who have been seen at the graded levels. Yes. Once you are tough and whatnot, then those will be even more effective in kind of bursting up. And then, pardon? Yes, cover off. Yes. So this will be our take back, cover up, and cowgirl up, cow monk up, cow nun up. So, put a hat and then say, who are you? I'm a cow monk. What are you up to? Cow monking up? Where? Just about everywhere. Anytime, with anybody, including myself. Okay. Let's then move on to target counts. Now comes the square ones. Like one has to watch out for these opposite tendencies that could slow down on one's cultivation of fortitude. Those could be the obstacles to watch for. Like, say, there was a problem in a religious community, maybe some other community has just unluckily chosen to attack you. Everybody is up in arms, saying, this is the time you can't think of your precepts. Rather, here the target counts. Let me hit just as many as I can. Whoa, with all outrage. And says, this is a very different situation. I can't think about precepts, or I can't think of harming others. All that counts as the targets that are hit as hard as I can. So sometimes one may feel justified in doing so, given the seriousness of the situation. Yeah. But what one has to remember, yeah, in the text, it even sets a scenario where one monastic member was watching the other one really up in arms, really kind of harming them with arrows one after the other. The other one reminds, oh, not that much. See, you have the precept to keep. No. I forgot about the precept. This time the targets are hit counts. Only that counts. So one can become so blatant, so blind about this. Whereas even in such situation, even if it means that you lose out on that one count, if one could withstand it with integrity, spiritual integrity and whatnot, the message, the strength of that, the reward from that, in terms of really benefiting, could go far, far more, even into those who were inflicting here and now, like that. And then the next one. Oh, crow and owl. I always have difficulty saying that. Owl. Do you also say that crow and owl are natural enemies? Maybe they have met up in the West. Yeah, but not in the East anymore. Even now, they just get each other. Somehow there is this legend. Somehow there is this understanding, folk culture, for understanding that yes, they are natural enemies. Likewise, we line up several other enemies as natural enemies. We team up several other animals as natural enemies, and as a sign, as an auspicious sign of overcoming negativities, obstacles, we make chimeras. Or we make chimeras of those two animals put together with one head and the tail of the other. Not that they are actual animals, but they are kind of symbolic of making up, right? You see that in the Tibetan prayer flags also. One as a dragon with a conch shell, something, right? Like that. Yeah. So like crows and owls, don't ever get by. What we could end up, even as spiritual practitioners, we could end up forming our own factions, forgetting about the whole purpose of first coming out from householder's life into the monastic. And then that doesn't necessarily have to be householder's life against monastic necessarily, from careless, unruly, giving into kind of reactive person into now caring to kind of take charge of one's own emotions and whatnot. But then in the meantime, one could then lose out on that purpose and begin to, again, what do you call, what's the term? To build factions. Yeah, pardon? Yeah, to form cliques, to form different factions, and then begin to kind of look at others, what do you call, undeservingly, etc. Like for religious practitioners or someone affiliated with a religion, there's this great danger. And because this is some kind of a trend in the society that, the religious persons should have the justification of looking down over others. And then if you don't care, if you are not careful, then the philosophical differences that could have ideologically huge difference, huge implication, could kind of even seep into that sense of faction and then make it even stronger. In terms of difference, you are different, but that doesn't necessarily have to feed that sense of biasness, sense of looking down upon others, sense of disrespect, fueling all of these problems. And then also feeding into the sense of we are higher, those are lower, we are better, they are not, I'm more compassionate, he is not. Yeah, like that. So it could be between individuals, between factions, between communities, whatnot, that we might end up into doing that. And that is, as the scripture says, if that happens, then what you claim to be practicing Fortitude would be mere name. Or one would be just putting away your chances of ever picking up on Fortitude far, far away. It's like flinging it away from you and adopting something else. Yep. And then the last one. Like ice. Ice, I saw on the cup. Ice like coffee, right? Ice like coffee. Do you think the ice like ice? The eyes like eyes? Do you think so? But what about eyes like themselves? No, the eye. They even don't know that they exist. All they see is not themselves. Right? They see just about everything, but not themselves. I mean, even what they are made of, they just don't see. Likewise, we have to watch against our tendency of always, what do you call, sensing others' faults, not one's own. And I mean, to a certain extent, that would be just natural. I mean, if something is happening, that's happening, and what you see is what's happening, but then not then kind of make a big deal of that and kind of use that as a way of attacking someone, of kind of downplaying someone, etc., etc. Because if we fall into that trend, then it will aggravate the tendency of not seeing your own fault, kind of seeing everybody faulty but not oneself. In such case, even if one has a big, big fault, one wouldn't see it. You remember, maybe I shared this last time, in the Tibetan saying we have this, you even see the small louse, lice, Tibetans use these metaphors, it's not so good, right? I hardly see louse, lice around, on myself, on others anymore. Are they gone extinct? Maybe not. Okay. What about?
In primary school.
Oh, okay. So that really speaks. I remember back my school times. I would be lousy, literally lousy guy. So much so. Let me tell you, when we got to meet our parents just once a year or once 2 years, far away. And I don't know from where this gets. Then eventually when my father would come to take us on vacation, at the very last stop, just before getting to our home in tents, cloth tents on the roadsides, because my parents were making they were in the road construction work, and always moving from one place to another. Every time they go to work, they go to work clean, tidy, come back dusty. All that. That's the life I saw. So when we got back, when we would go for vacation after my parents. The last stop would be an Indian house, Indian inn, and then we will go. And we will always stop in that Indian inn. The mother there, not knowing any Tibetan, not knowing even Tibetan people, somehow she would always reach for my clothes and then take all the flowers out and then put them in a cup and then throw somewhere. I still remember that. That's what undeniable. Oh, I must be lousy because I saw that coming from my clothes. So that speaks. That was in school time, boarding school, far off from parents. Oh, all of that. So. So I have to follow up on that. Tibetans have a saying, you even see the lies, even nits on the others, but don't see the yak on your nose. You may be carrying a yak on your nose, not here, not somewhere on your nose, but still you don't see the yak. But you can see the nit, lies on others. Yeah, there. That's something we have to watch out for. Otherwise, we can get used to that.
Could you say it in Tibetan?
Pardon?
Could you say it in Tibetan? Say the phrase.
Oh.
The oral transmission.
현댕기 시기인장통 랑댕기 나댕기 야인장마통. Even if it is just the need of the lives and the loves on somebody else, you see it. But the yak on your nose, even that you don't see it.
There's a Bible verse.
Pardon?
There's a Bible verse like that.
Oh.
Just take the beam out of your own eye before the speck out of your neighbor.
Wow, that nails it. That nails it.
Just take the stick out of your own eye before you take the splinter out of someone else's eye.
Oh, exactly. That nails it. Pardon?
That's right.
Pathology? What was that?
Ken is an ophthalmologist.
Oh, ophthalmologist. Okay.
I took a lot of sticks out of people's eyes.
Did you take lots of sticks out of their eyes or splinters out of their? But do you agree?
Now I'm working on my own.
Okay, I think since we have already taken out the splinters of others and also the sticks of others, that should be good to stop here, I think. Yeah. Is it time?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So, So, yes. Oh yeah, let's sing. Yes. O chan chu sen be su pa ni ma cha mi cha pa me cha pa ni ya ma yin de ma cha mi cha pa me. Oh, last one. Oh, last one is very important. Ah, you reminded me. Yes, thank you. Yes, we cannot skip this. Yes. We already have covered Madhyamika topics the past few years, and it has always been coming back in your reflection, contemplation, whatnot. And then likewise it's the same case with bodhicitta and related practices. And this time we particularly talked about bodhicitta and the perfection practices. So we should learn from this, that His Holiness has just recently, September 7, 2018, spoke at a teaching. Yeah. Oh, you were there? Yeah, but Venerable and Venerable Damjula were there. I see, yes. Ah, I see. Oh, yeah, exactly. So let's read this together. I first began to develop an interest in emptiness when I was about 14 or 15 years old. and engage in rigorous study. However, I only gained some experience of understanding it when I was about 30. Cultivating altruism and a thorough understanding of emptiness are my main practices. Fulfilling them requires study, reflection, and meditation. I bear the name of the Dalai Lama, but whatever insight I have achieved is the result of my own efforts. Therefore, my blessing to you is to encourage you to study, 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 reflect, 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 and meditate, meditate, meditate.